Hello, good people of OpenArt. Today I'm going to show you a couple methods on how to keep your backgrounds consistent. Now I want to make it very clear that this process is using existing trained characters. So if you're new to OpenArt or you've never trained a character, make sure you check out those videos on how to train your characters. We're going to look at two main methods, and I'm going to bring up this image here. This will serve as my main background image for this portion of the demonstration. So the first step is to create your background. Now you want to think ahead as well. Let me move my big head. And the first tip I have for you is to generate your background in the perspective that you want. So this one is basically front view, and then my characters would be sitting on the floor. So you want to stage your scene with your prompt, be as detailed as possible. And in terms of the model, I was using Flux Dev to create the background because when we train characters, the base model used is Flux Dev. So keep that in mind when you're generating your background. You want to use any of the Flux models so it has a similar look and style. That being said, with Flux Kontext, it can adopt the style too. Next, you want to generate your character. In my case, my character Raki, he's this cute little raccoon character. I wanted him sitting on the floor playing video games. And yes, he has odd little fingers there, but I digress. And you want to state the action in your prompt. So you see here, I have @Raki is playing video games and sitting on the floor with his legs crossed and smiling. At this point, the background doesn't matter. We just need his initial pose. Then download your image by clicking on this icon here. Save it locally because we're going to have to bring it in a bit later. I did the same thing for my other character, Luna. And the goal here is to put them together in that one scene, right? Now, once you have your characters made, come back to your background image and select the edit icon. Now that we're on the canvas, if I take a look at my image, I see that I don't have enough floor space for my characters to sit down. So what we can do is go up to expand. Let's make sure we select the image first, and then we're going to click on expand, and then we're going to select 16:9 or whatever aspect ratio you want. Now, theoretically, we can go ahead and just fill the frame like this. I want more foreground, so I'm going to bring it down, and I don't want the image to be that big because I don't really want any more details here. You can do that if you want. So I'm simply just going to drag the square so that it hugs one of the corners, and then I'm going to grab the handle on the corner, and that looks okay to me. Will generate a little of the bottom and the right side. Now it does help to put the previous prompt in here. In this case, I'm just going to leave it and hope that we get a good result. But if you find if your results are too out there, I recommend putting in the same prompt that you used to generate the background. Go ahead and click create. And then on the right, you will see it'll start generating 4 images, and we can choose the best one. Out of all the generations, I like this one the best. It added a little love seat here, and it expanded the door, but you see that the rug's a little cut off. So there's a couple things we can do here. Like I said, we can regenerate using the original prompt. But in this case, I think I'm just going to inpaint the rug. I'm going to save it to generation history so that I have this version saved just in case. I also like to save it locally. Totally up to you if you want to do that. And then we're going to add it to the canvas. So once again, select your image, and we're going to select Inpaint. And we're just going to increase the brush size a bit. You can be very generous with your Inpaint. So we're just going to cover this area here. And my prompt is very simple: area rug on a wooden floor. Creativity level, I typically leave it at 3. And I'm going to use the premium Flux Inpaint model. I'm going to hit create. The reason why I'm showing you this whole process is because I want you to understand that just generating an image is typically not enough to get your final result. Oftentimes I'm inpainting, adding details, combining images, composing them. And that's important because it stops you from pulling on the roulette wheel and hoping after many generations that you get that perfect image. In reality, that's just not how it works. That being said, let's take a look at our new image with a complete area rug. Amazing. That looks pretty good. Let's take a look at the other one. That one's cool too. Kind of like that one. Let's go with that. Once again, we're going to save it to our history, and I'm going to save it locally and then add to canvas. Now that I'm happy with my scene, this is where we're going to manually import our characters. But first, we need to select this icon. This will convert the image to what's called a blend board. And basically, if you're into composing your images, this will blend the other images into the background. And instead of it looking like a copy-paste job, it's going to blend it in and even tweak shadows and lighting to make it look blended, right? Typically, I would tell you to click on Add Image Layer. I think I mentioned this in a previous video, but currently, if we do it, there is a little bug that hasn't been fixed yet. The image quality resolution is a bit lower. So I encourage you just to drag and drop it into the canvas, and you'll see my image here at full size. Now what you need to do is just kind of hover over it, let go, and it's going to automatically remove the background for us. Excuse the interruption, folks. I had a brain fart moment. So what I had forgotten to tell you guys is that when you import the image, it's good practice to crop the image first and crop it as tight as possible. So when we bring it in and combine it to be a blend board, now once I compose the image here, the only affected area is going to be within this box here. If we had kept the original aspect ratio, when we blend the image, some of it may affect how Grandpa looks. We don't want to do that. So any of the changes will be made within this box. So for the rest of the video, just pretend that I remembered to tell you about this. And at this point, we just need to compose the image. Now, you'll notice here that his tail was deleted. Don't worry about that. When the image is blended, it should Inpaint that back in. And in terms of the size, I think by default, that looks pretty good. So yeah, let's place him over here. And then I'm going to bring in the second character. And we'll do the same thing. Hover over, let go. And she's a giant. Now, obviously, we want to scale her to be in the same proportion as Raki over there. Now the scene is composed and you can tell it looks very cut and paste, especially around Raki's head here. So what we need to do at this point is just come over to the right and select blend. Now you can adjust the creativity level if you want to add details. And you'll also notice that we have layers for each character. So I can turn this off and they disappear. You can hide and show the original background as well. I'm going to go ahead and click blend, and now it starts the process of blending the images together. Here's the blended image. You'll notice his tail is back, and if I'm not happy with that tail, I can always Inpaint over that. But if you notice the shadows here and here, it does a really good job of blending the scene so that the image looks seamless. So generally, that's the process. Even if you wanted to add more characters onto the same background or even have them sitting on the couch, you would just have to generate those images separately, bring them into the canvas, create the blend board, compose your image, and off you go. Now, one of the benefits of this process is that it's a reliable one. But the drawbacks are that if you need your characters to interact, that can be an issue. Or if you want to change perspectives, you can't really do it with this method, and that's a little bit more complicated. But I do want to show you an alternate method with using Flux Kontext. This image you're looking at, I created using Flux Kontext Max. The previous method is fairly easy and reliable to do. This method is easier to bring your characters into the scene, but it has its limitations. Now, if you really look closely at the background, this is the same background that I've used, but it's a closer shot and they're sitting on the couch. Basically, that shot was framed around this area here. Obviously, the process is a little bit more different. First and foremost, let's bring in the same background image. And then instead of generating the character separately, we can just go ahead and click into this area and select the characters that we want to use. In my case, it's my Tigra Roar character and also Hector the Lazy Sloth. There he is. And I found depending on your scene, sometimes it's good to place these characters in this scene or something to that nature. Although for some reason, for this particular scene, I was having a bit of issues getting consistency. So I first started with identifying the characters as we've done in the past. The character wearing the gray hoodie and the character with the red kung fu outfit. You could even be more specific and say the sloth or the tiger. And then I have them on the couch laughing. And as always, to keep the consistency, I state to maintain their facial features, likeness, and exact clothing. Now, I've done it without this line and it's still consistent, but it's good practice to put it in there to increase your chances of a good generation. Now, it's up to you what aspect ratio you want. I'm keeping mine at 16:9. And then you just have to select your quantity and go ahead and click create. Here's a few generations, and for the most part, most of the images came out fairly good. Sometimes you'll notice the size difference. That's another limitation of Flux Kontext. But in this image, you see Hector is a lot smaller, which is my initial intention for him to be smaller than the tiger character. Some things you can do is change the perspective of the subjects as well. Like in the prompt here, I just added side view, and now they're facing each other. And I also prompted for the top view. Typically, when you're changing perspective with context, the focus is mostly the subject's perspective, not the camera angle. But for this one, it worked. I couldn't get it to do low angle or side angle in terms of the camera perspective, but it did give me this top view. One thing that you should be able to control, though, is the front view perspective. So without mentioning anything specific, just by adding those 3 reference images gives me a fairly tight crop shot on the subject. But in this example, I stated wide angle perspective to bring in more of the background. It does look like he's about to fall off the couch there, but you get my point. If we look at the prompt here, a wide angle perspective of the sloth wearing the gray hoodie, so on and so forth. I can't guarantee that it's always going to work, but it's worth playing around. And if you do, put it at the front of the prompt so that it gives it some weight. And that will prioritize that part of the prompt. In a previous Flux Kontext video, some of you asked, can we do more than 2 characters at one time? The answer is yes. However, there are some stipulations. If you look at the image here, I have 4 of my characters in one scene, and it's the same process that I just showed you by picking the character in Omni reference. Everything is consistent, it looks great. However, it did take me a few tries. If you look at this example, close but no cigar. We have some hybrid results where they're swapping faces and clothing. In this one, we have 2 tigers, we're missing the wolf. But then on this shot, it worked very well. And before you all whine and complain, oh, it should be perfect all the time. Well, Flux Kontext isn't really optimized for this many characters at once or all that information. And why I say that is because with 3 characters, it's a lot more accurate, even better with just 2 characters. With this scene, I used the 3 character slots and this background image. So if you look at the plants here and this area here, you'll see the same background here with my 3 characters playing poker. Now I know they're showing their cards, but again, we can easily fix that with inpainting or some sort of editing. I would say best practice is to try to keep it to 2 to 3 characters at the most. That way you can still use one of the slots for a specific background. So I hope that was helpful, and as always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Again, this isn't a perfect solution for every scenario, but I personally use these methods for my work, and it's gotten me closer to having consistent characters, consistent backgrounds, enabling me to tell my story and not worry about all the technical stuff to get there. There are other techniques that I'm experimenting with, and once I have it down and I can confidently share with you that it works, I'll definitely be back.